This is Felicity Chaos of Chaotic Opossum or Felicity 90 Degrees. I used OSB Studio to record the screen while I did my project on Krita. As you see here, this is my first card, the Fool. I decided to go with the Bullet Vibrator as my first card. I was using it as reference and going back and forth originally, but I think eventually I had to move it next to it so I could see what I was doing because the back and forth was just getting annoying. Um, I used the textured impressionism brush for the background of the card, and then for the details, I did the oh shoot, what's it called? The basic brush. I just like the clean lines it gives, and if you hold up on the pen a little bit, it gives the little streak that you get when you use like an actual paintbrush, and so I like that. I wanted to do a tarot set, and I have all of these ideas for a tarot set, but well, different tarot sets more specifically, but I just didn't know where to start. And I remember a few weeks or a month ago or something like that, I had made a watercolor piece IRL as a mimic. So I took a vibrator and then I made it a mimic, like D&D mimic. And so I took that inspiration and I went with it, and I decided, why not make a tarot deck based around sex toys? I might also base it around BDSM as well. I'm not quite sure yet. However, this has been a really, really fun project for me so far. I decided that it would be best for me to practice on the fundamentals of shading and shape and stuff like that, but I still wanted to be creative. And so I thought that sex toys would be the best way to do that because I'm drawing, objects that are very many different shapes and sizes, but I'm focusing on shading and like perspective. A really helpful tool that I used throughout this project was the straight line tool and the symmetry tools that are up on the right hand corner. If you look to the right hand corner, you can see that there are these little triangles that are split in half. And those were really helpful for me in creating the border and making sure that the lines were connecting, because to make sure this project was simplified in terms of the background being easy to replicate over and over again without having to do it every single project, that way I could focus on the art itself rather than the border, I needed to make sure that the lines would connect. So when I used this fill tool to figure out what shades I wanted for the dark lines around the border and the border itself, that I could easily color them in without having to sit there and very carefully zoom in and recolor every single one. Something I noticed while editing this video is OSB Studio apparently speeds up your content naturally. And this is something I noticed due to the fact that this was like a 6 to 7 hour sit down project. And when I downloaded the video, it was only like an hour, maybe 2 hours long at max. So, unless I'm particularly talking about something very specific and I need to slow the video down to show you, it like naturally seems to speed it up. So here, as I tried several times because I want the words to be in my handwriting, I tried to fit the card name The Magician into it, And then I tried Magus, like the Magus Bride from the anime and the manga, or the manga and the anime. But I forgot how to spell it, and so I went with Magus, or I think it was, yeah, Magus, which isn't a shorthand for mage or the magician or something like that. It's actually like a race when I looked it up. It's I can't remember specifically where it's from, but it was like a race of people. And so I was just really confused as to like where the shorthand for magician is coming from. And so I tried several times to get it right. And eventually you'll see that I went to mage instead because of the shorthand, but I didn't like it, and so I went with the mystic. Now, when you look up the definition of mystic, it says can refer to a person who seeks to experience union with the divine or ultimate reality, often through spiritual practices like meditation or prayer. And I really like this term personally because with the magician, it talks about creation, willpower, trickery, or illusions. And I always like this card personally because to me it's a representation of manifestation and just force of will or force of soul, or like one's true will, if you are into like Thelema philosophy and things like that. But the mystic is kind of more open ended. You know, a mystic can be a part of any religion, but a magician is one of those words that is very heavily used for a lot of different things as well. But with the magician, you have the connotation of like today's magicians who are using trickery and illusion before your eyes to sell you a fun experience. Or you have the psychic magician, or you have the witch magician, or the occult magician. And thanks to Aleister Crowley, we have the magician with a K, meaning more occult or witchy. And then there's the magician, which is, you know, the ones who play with the cards and do the tricks. And it's just funny because, you know, we also play with cards. But something I've noticed is even though there's this K spelling for magic and magician that's used in the occult community, I rarely see the magician spelled with a K on cards. Now, here, as you can see, I'm looking for references for vibrators because with the mystic, I wanted to use a vibrator. And I thought it would just be funny to play with the words that are associated with the magicians, like magic wand. And this vibrator that I found is actually called a magic wand vibrator. I don't know if that's the name of the company or just the name of the vibrator specifically, but I thought it was really funny. And so I decided to pick this one, and I looked at a couple of different references while I was using this, and I also looked up a couple of different references for power chords so I could get the look that I was going for. Now, that little thing on the side there, the little thumbtack, if you click on that, you can add your references through copy and paste, which allows you to put them on your canvas without them showing as a actual asset in your canvas. Now, something I used throughout this project were the different shape tools as well as the line tools, and I felt that they were very useful for creating the shapes that I needed without that really sketchy, kind of everywhere lines that you get when you're sketching on paper. And so what I did several times is I used these shape tools, the circle and the line tool mostly. I think I used the rectangle a couple of times to get the shape that I was looking for. And I altered it as I went. I erased, I added, right? But it allowed me to create this base shape that made it easier for me down the line. That's something I really like about digital art is the layers, the application. It's very similar to the medium I have the most experience in, which is acrylic. I'm not very good at mix and paint, but the layers is one of those things that as an artist is really helpful to me, because with layers you can really genuinely say, hey, I am, moving through the ugly process. Something I might change for my next project is instead of using the basic brush for the underneath shading like I'm doing here, is instead using the airbrush tool to make them. Because even though I really enjoyed the laying down the colors and then blending them with the blend tool, the one specifically I used is the one that looks like a Q-tip. Now, even though I really enjoy that, it kind of looks a little streaky. And even though that is easy to kind of disappear underneath the Impressionism brush, it's still not as nice looking as I would like it to be. So I'm wondering if maybe using the airbrush for this underneath shading that you're looking at right now would be better. A struggle that I came to face like several times throughout this project was determining the right size for specifically the Impressionism texture brush, because even though I like 15.8 for my more precise lines, like the borders, when it came to the Impressionism brush, making it too big would render the detailing practically useless, but making it too small was kind of taking away from the texture that I was trying to give. And it was very difficult to take the color from the shading and then input it into the texture brush. So what I mean by that is the little droplet tool that allows you to pick from a color. When I took it and then I applied it to the Impressionism texture brush, the dark blue on my darkest side of the vibrator, it became purple through the texture brush. And I wasn't really the biggest fan of that. So even though I loved the Impressionism texture that I eventually did on the vibrator, I really enjoyed making the cord. That part of the process was really fun to me for me because I had to figure out how to draw it both above and underneath the border, as well as giving it details. And I really enjoyed drawing it in this kind of like wispy, almost flowy. I know that's so silly because it's just, I don't know, it just like kind of adds to the magical or like silliness of the card. And I just really enjoyed drawing the shape and the details and figuring out how to put it underneath the border. I eventually put them in two separate layer files. I had one for over the border and one for underneath of the border, which you will see later here soon. Now, I know this is very sped up, so it's a little hard to see the moves I'm making in Krita and the details that I'm doing. However, this was again, 6 to 7 hour project, so I felt it would be better to speed the process up and just kind of talk about my little thoughts here and there, rather than trying to figure out a script for that amount of time, which is just insane. Now, for the plug aspect of the cord, I really wanted a 2-prong plug. and I had a very specific look I wanted for it. The bottom of the cord that attaches to the wand itself is the shape, and I don't know what it's called or what kind of cord it's called. It's the shape that has the little indentions in it, and I wanted a similar feel for the cord itself. So I was trying desperately to get this shape right over and over again, and eventually I did get it, but it took me a lot of time just shaping it, trying to get the perspective right, and making sure it could fit on the rest of the cord properly. One of my goals for my art this year was to make sure that I could draw and develop things with simple sketches or doing simple things. So throughout this project, I'm going to be sticking to particular colors, and it's not going to be monochromatic because I do believe that that specifically refers to black and white, but I will be sticking to very specific types of color palettes throughout this project. With the first one, I focused on the first line of the gradient palette for the bullet, and then for this one, I focused around the second and third line, I think, for the more blue colors that I was going for. I know that there's a lot of purple here, but trust me, the bullet, if you look back, you can see it's much more pink and purple, and this one is much more purple and blue. um, but I really enjoyed doing this so much. And here you can see I'm using the line tool to create the shading. And oh my gosh, was this so much fun for me to figure out how to do. I actually had to slow the video down a little bit because it was going too fast and it ended too quickly. So I used different shaping tools several times throughout this project, the rectangle, the circle, and the line tool. And right here for the shading on the on-off button, I used the line tool to show the shading, to imply that there was a shape there, and that was really fun for me to do. And I really enjoyed that. As you can see here, though, originally what I had tried to do was I tried to use the fill tool, but after like taking a look at the line tool, that's when I realized, hey, I can just use the line to imply that there is shading here. And that was just like a big aha moment for me. And I know that's just so silly, but like I'm used to doing and struggling with physical medium art and not being able to like mix the colors and do what I want. And so like just seeing this and seeing, oh, I can do this specifically, I was just like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. And so I really enjoyed just the simple aha moments of this project. I know I kind of sped through it, but as you can see behind the power cord, I used not the power brush tool, the airbrush tool to put this like color behind the cord. And I really think it added to the depth and just like the funness of this card personally. And honestly, one of my favorite parts of this cord was figuring out how to do the shading and shape for this on off switch right here. It's so simple, but I enjoyed it so much because just using the little lines and the little colors to imply the shading, again, I just can't express enough how fun that was to figure out and how fun this process was in general to stick to these very specific colors and try to figure out how to shade with them, how to blend them. And this was the end result. And I'm just really proud of this project. So yeah, we've got the Mystic as my second card in this deck that I'm going to be making, and I'd love ideas. If anyone has any ideas for things to draw or cards to make, or even just any art ideas for me in general, I'm totally open for them, and I would love to hear your thoughts. But yeah, this project was really fun, and I really enjoyed it, and I hope you'll have a great time.